So this is a list of all of the recommendations that came out of that months-long study. So what they want to basically do is they're saying all of these are recommendations, and there is a recommendation number 8 that basically says, take all these and amend the Elections Canada Act. We're not the only ones that read the report. Evidently, Thomas and Kieran read this report as well. And let me tell you, they are not happy with Northern Perspective.
As many of you know, the Terrebonne by-election is underway after the Supreme Court nullified the results of the 2025 election in that riding. At the same time, Ryan warned the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs that the longest ballot committee would not stop trying to interfere in our elections when he testified back in October. Now that warning is proving to be accurate, as the longest ballot committee is once again attempting to flood the ballot with candidates. However, on March 24th, a report was tabled in Parliament outlining their activities and recommending changes to stop it. And let me tell you, Thomas and Kieran Shukevich are not happy.
Let's take a look. So, ladies and gentlemen, here's an article that was published the other day in the National Post. Close nomination loopholes exploited by longest ballot committee MPs say. There were approximately 18,000 complaints about the LBC's activities during the April 2025 general election.
Ottawa. A committee studying the impact of protest group the Longest Ballot Committee, or LBC, in recent Canadian elections is calling on Parliament to close nomination loopholes the group has used to flood ballots with paper candidates. In a report released Tuesday, MPs representing a multi-partisan House of Commons Committee on Democratic Procedures recommended multiple revisions to the Elections Act to make it harder for frivolous candidates to appear on the ballot. Such revisions include a prohibition on signing more than one candidate's nomination paper per cycle and, pivotally, an amendment to prohibit individuals from serving as the official agent for more than one candidate per electoral district. LBC member Thomas Shukevich has been the official agent for hundreds of protest candidates in 8 federal election races since 2021, including more than 200 candidates in last summer's by-election in Battle River Crowfoot. The report said that allowing an individual to be the official agent for more than one candidate in a given riding, quote, seems to run contrary to the very nature of elections, which are competitive contests, with only one candidate declared the winner in every riding. If anything, having the same official agent for 2 or more candidates who are competing against each other in the same riding places the official agent in an apparent, if not real, conflict of interest. End quote, continues the report. The report also delved into allegations of questionable practices by the LBC in nominating candidates, including accusations that the group collected signatures on a nomination form where the candidate's name was left blank in contravention of the law. Thomas Shukevich denied this accusation in a statement, saying that the MPs on the committee got quote-unquote bamboozled by what he described as the deceptive editing of right-leaning YouTube channel Northern Perspective. Quote, this is just another clear example which demonstrates exactly why MPs should not be in charge of their own election rules, wrote Shukevich. They were so eager to believe anything that would put the LBC in a bad light, they left their critical faculties at the door. Northern Perspective, in turn, denies Shukevich's allegation of deceptive editing, claimed they used image-enhancing tools to examine whether a candidate's name was present on the form, revealing it wasn't, and at no time altered material in a way that misrepresented the underlying facts.
So the interesting to note is this isn't the final version of the article. The original version of the article actually continued the story after they had what Thomas had provided to them in a statement. And we'll get to that in a minute. But it didn't actually mention anything to do with Northern Perspective, and we weren't contacted for comment. So we took it upon ourselves to contact the reporter and the author of this article, and full credit, that reporter got back to us almost immediately and said, absolutely, I'm happy to take a statement and update the article accordingly. And so we provided a fulsome statement, and they took the most relevant part. that they felt would match the article's flow and spirit. So just want to give credit that there are still journalists out there that care about integrity, and they also care about truth. And it was really nice to see that this correction was A, accepted, and B, updated so quickly. But we wanted to give you a sense on what the full correction was that we did send to the National Post. So here it is. We reject the claim that Northern Perspective engaged in quote-unquote deceptive editing. Our reporting on the longest ballot committee was based on primary source material, including direct communications and documentation provided by a whistleblower and publicly available records. Those findings were not only published, but also submitted to Elections Canada and presented as part of my testimony before a parliamentary committee studying these issues. Our reporting identified practices that raise serious questions under the Canada Elections Act, including how nomination materials were collected and handled. These concerns are consistent with issues acknowledged in committee testimony. Chief Electoral Officer Stéphane Perreault, appearing before the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs on October 2nd, 2025, stated that, quote, we have refused in past elections the initial iteration of that initiative involving having a blank check, and, quote, confirming that similar practices have previously been identified and rejected. With respect to the specific allegation, we used image enhancement tools to examine whether a candidate name was present in the relevant fields and were unable to identify one. We also published and submitted the original unaltered images alongside any enhanced versions, including to the committee. At no point was material altered in a way that misrepresented the underlying facts. We stand by the accuracy and integrity of our reporting and welcome scrutiny. We are prepared to provide a full archive of documents that we tabled in committee if desired. That's the full story, and that's our full response. And just to make sure it's crystal clear for the folks at the longest ballot committee, here is Stéphane Perreault testifying on October 2nd, 2025.
On the issue of blank names at the top, the name of the candidate has to be ascertained, or the potential prospective candidate. There cannot be a blank check. And we have refused in past election. The initial iterations of that initiative involved having a blank check, basically people signing on without an identified candidate. That is not acceptable.
So even the CEO says that they've done this before.
So, checkmate. That's all I have to say to that. Anyway, let's go back to the article and continue.
The report noted that there were, quote, approximately 18,000 complaints, end quote, submitted to elections officials about the LBC's activities during the April 2025 general election. Bonnie Critchley, who ran as an independent in the Battle River Crowfoot by-election, estimates the LBC cost her at least 20% of the vote.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say I salute you. 18,000 complaints. So that would have come in from all over the country. Many of those would have come from people in NP Nation. This is how you know you are not alone when you're writing these emails, and you're not alone when you're calling Elections Canada or your MP's office or any other part of the legislative branch where you want to make your voice heard. There are tens of thousands of other people that are doing the same thing. And this is how we get attention on these issues, is when this many people say, I'm not going to stand by, I'm not going to keep quiet, I'm going to get involved. So I just want to say hats off to everybody who filed a complaint with Elections Canada. At least yours was heard. Mine was not, but we'll get to that later. But speaking of that, this is the actual report itself that was tabled on Tuesday in Parliament regarding this investigation relating to the longest ballot committee and issues with our elections. Becoming a candidate in a federal election, a review of the criteria. So this is a very long report, but we're only going to show a couple of snippets. This is one of the sections that we want to focus on: allegations of questionable practices by longest ballot committee in nominating candidates.
During Proc's study, questions arose about the process that the LBC employed to gather signatures on the requisite candidate nomination papers provided by Elections Canada. Specifically, Proc heard allegations that the LBC had used nomination papers for which the candidate's name on the form was left blank at the time signatures were gathered. Mr. Shukevich told Proc that the process followed by the LBC for nominating candidates was done, quote, by the book, end quote, or according to the legal exigences of the CEA. He explained that candidates were first recruited. On the requisite Elections Canada nomination paper, the LBC either listed the candidate's name or wrote, quote, all candidates, end quote, and then collected the requisite signatures on behalf of the candidates. He stated that the LBC had not at any point collected signatures on nomination papers that had a blank in the candidate field. He noted that the CEO, in his appearance before Proc, had testified that Elections Canada had not found any credible evidence of any wrongdoing on the part of the LBC. Mr. Shukevich noted that in one instance where the LBC had put forward candidates to run in an electoral riding, that riding's returning officer, or RO, determined that the LBC's candidates were not acceptable and consequently were not permitted to run. Mr. Shukevich told Proc that the RO's decision was based on the nomination papers that the LBC had provided.
So just one point of contention here. So, yes, the chief electoral officer had said, they haven't found any credible evidence to show any wrongdoing of the longest ballot committee. But what Mr. Shukevich conveniently leaves out is that the chief electoral officer also said that they didn't conduct an investigation to actually determine if there was going to be any wrongdoing at that point.
Well, and we also know that they didn't receive your evidence package until after he testified.
Right.
After you testified.
And we also know that the chief electoral officer had said that they don't audit signatures and they don't audit this stuff. And here's the other problem. So if the longest ballot goes out and collects all these signatures, and let's just say, for the sake of argument, that they're doing it with a blank candidate or a blank nomination form, how is Elections Canada going to know that you wrote in the candidate's name afterwards and then submitted it to them? How are they going to know that? But this is the issue. And this is the first time that any sort of comprehensive investigation has been done into the longest ballot committee's activities and submitted to Elections Canada. Now, let's just say that there was a candidate name at the top there, just for the sake of argument. The problem still comes is that we have evidence, and we showed it from this whistleblower, that they were saying that we already have your signatures for you. They had a video on there where Thomas was bragging to everybody, we already have your signatures for you. We just need you to sign up. Well, then you're collecting these signatures for candidates that aren't candidates yet. And that's against the Elections Act. So no matter which way you spin this, there's still potential violations of the Canada Elections Act. And that's what I testified to.
Well, and further to the point, we provided Proc and we also provided Elections Canada with both the unaltered image as well as the one that we had upscaled. And I don't recall anybody else providing a original photo to committee.
And I don't recall Thomas Shukevich providing it either, because they didn't post it online. They didn't send it to us. They didn't try and correct us. So all they sent us was rude emails. Anyway,
and legal threats. Don't forget those.
Yes. Oh, legal threats to take it down.
Further, Mr. Shukevich told Proc that neither he nor the LBC had ever received a reprimand, had no intention of misleading anyone, and that they have nothing to hide. At the same time, some members of Proc called into question the veracity of Mr. Shukevich's contention the LBC had not gathered signatures on nomination papers that had the candidate's name left blank. To that end, some members of Proc raised with Mr. Shukevich that on August 18th, 2024, the LBC posted a video on YouTube that shows Mr. Shukevich appealing to potential candidates for the LaSalle-Armard-Verdun by-election, asking them to run, saying that the LBC had already collected the 100 signatures on their behalf. And on January 22nd, 2024, the LBC posted a YouTube video on the website X in which an LBC nomination paper with signatures and a blank entry for the candidate's name could be seen. In response, Mr. Shukevich stated that those contentions were not accurate and that the LBC had never collected signatures with a blank candidate name. Mr. Davies told Proc that he had compiled evidence of what he considered to be breaches of the CEA and had provided it in an electronic package to Elections Canada on July 25th, 2025. Mr. Davies stated that he had obtained internal LBC communications from an individual who had been approached by the LBC to run as a candidate. Using these communications, along with publicly available information about the LBC, Mr. Davies provided Proc with the following observations. The LBC, in his view, functioned like a political party apparatus rather than a decentralized protest group. However, the LBC are not registered as a political party. LBC organizers told potential candidates who had not even agreed to run in an election that the LBC had already gathered the requisite signatures needed to register on their behalf. He alleged that this was a violation of Section 67 of the CEA. Signatures were collected from electors by individuals who had not been appointed by candidates to act on their behalf. He alleged that this was a violation of Sections 67 and 480.11e of the CEA, and potentially forgery under the Criminal Act as well, and potentially forgery under the Criminal Code as well. Generally, there was substantial and sustained overlap between the activities of the LBC and that of the Marxist-Leninist Party of Canada. Mr. Davies told Proc that as of 9 October 2025, he had received no response from Elections Canada regarding the information that he had provided.
As I said, many of you got your complaints through. Mine did not. Long story short, it seemed to have been caught in their spam filter, which I guess they don't check. And then they said that, oh, well, you know, that's okay because all the relevant information was provided to the Commissioner of Elections Canada. The problem is the Commissioner of Elections Canada didn't have all the evidence that we had, but, you know, that's beside the point. Anyhow, they eventually got said complaint and it was eventually sent on to the Commissioner of Elections Canada. Okay, fine. So this is a list of all of the recommendations that came out of that months-long study and this huge report. So basically all of the information that was presented to committee, that was testified in committee orally, as well as through briefs and through documentation, all of that culminates in what the committee came to in terms of their recommendations, which is fascinating. What this comes down to is they're saying that people should only be able to sign once for a candidate's nomination. So that would eliminate this whole business about one person signing 100 different forms. The second one is that it would be an offense to sign more than one candidate's nomination paper. So that would be a violation of the Canada Elections Act. They want to make it an offense to induce anyone to sign more than one candidate's nomination paper, and that this offense be subject to penalties. Number 4, Canada Elections Act be amended to make an offense for a candidate to submit false or misleading information on a candidate nomination paper, and that this offense be subject to penalties. Number 5, this is the limiting candidates to one official agent, so that official agent would only be able to represent one candidate
Per riding.
And number 6, that the Elections Canada Act be amended to provide for penalties when signatures are obtained on a nomination paper before a candidate has been identified. And then number 7, that the Elections Canada Act be expanded to penalize anyone who counsels, engages in a conspiracy, or acts as an accessory after the fact to a violation or to an offense of the Act. So what they want to basically do is they're saying all of these are recommendations, and there is a recommendation number 8 that basically says take all these and amend the Elections Canada Act. That's what they're saying here. So we're not the only ones that read the report. Evidently, Thomas and Kieran read this report as well. And let me tell you, they are not happy with Northern Perspective. So they posted this one day ago. Disappointing, but also hilarious to see easily disprovable election misinformation from an online influencer becoming 3 of 8 recommendations, 4, 6, and 7, all directly reflective of Northern Perspective conspiracy theories. MPs are too gullible to be in charge of election rules. Time for them to recuse themselves. This is actually quite flattering because 3 of the recommendations that I had made actually made it into the parliamentary report, which was crazy. Absolutely crazy.
And this is what we mean when we say that you can have a huge impact on government. like Ryan said, three of the things that he had recommended made it into the report as recommendations. And the other thing that you probably weren't even intending to change, but did, was that Elections Canada now handles their spam folder a little bit differently.
Right.
So you're doing process even though you're not working for the government anymore.
Apparently I'm still managing IT departments, even though I'm not managing IT departments. So you're welcome. Anyway, this is interesting, but that wasn't their only post. They also posted this. Brock report released, and it looks like MPs fell for the conspiracy theories and photo editing skills of YouTuber Ryan Davies of Northern Perspective. See full report with all 8 recommendations here. And then they're circling back to something that that we posted 5 months ago when we posted our original video on this. So again, this wasn't photo editing skills. We took the original and we ran it through an upscaler in order to see if there was anything. Doesn't matter if there was even, a blotch. We wanted to see if there was anything in that candidate name field. Now, the issue is Thomas has not come out and shown evidence to the contrary. If he did, we would say fair game. But he hasn't. And that's the problem. And we even asked him to come on to talk about this. And he refused. Well, first he sent this snarky email saying, apparently your brain is too small and, you need me to come and explain this for you and this sort of thing. So we said, sure, come on over. And then he went radio silent. So this is the issue. But that was the evidence that we had, and that was the evidence we put forward, in addition to all of these other things. And those other issues ended up making it into these recommendations for committee. So it's amazing that Canadians can have this kind of an impact on their legislative system. Now, the good news is that from what we understand, there is going to be pretty bipartisan support for these recommendations. This isn't a conservative versus a liberal thing. So hopefully this ends up being a government bill or even a private member's bill on either the Liberals or the Conservative side, and they can get this passed relatively quickly so that in any future by-elections, the longest ballot is going to have literally nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. But before we get any further, let's continue on this on this topic of the Terrebonne by-election. So here's some information if you're voting in this election that you need to know. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the page on the Elections Canada website where you can get all the information on the by-election. The link is in the description as usual. One thing that they have done is they have gone to paper ballots as well, because the longest ballot has decided to get up to their antics.
The rogue so-called longest ballot committee is added again, this time targeting the by-election in Terrebonne. As of this morning, I noticed that there were 42 independent candidates that have been approved or certified to run in Terrebonne out of 48 or 49 candidates.
So the count is final, and we have in total 48 candidates for Terrebonne.
And so you will be given a paper ballot, you write in the name of the candidate, and that's basically all there is to it. Exactly the same as the by-election in Battle River Crowfoot. Speaking of candidates, this is the whole list. So you'll notice that there's only about 48, quote unquote, only. But you'll also notice that almost all of them have a different financial agent, as we stated would be happening in this by-election as a result of our previous new whistleblower video about the longest ballot going into Terrebonne.
I just find it interesting that the longest ballot committee is upset about these new rules. If you're not breaking them, then it shouldn't affect you.
Well, that's the interesting thing. Like, they complain about rule 4, 6, and 7, when there's actually going to be penalties about something. So if you're not actually committing those violations, why do you care?
Right. It shouldn't be an issue. So, I mean, anything to strengthen our democracy, I think, is a good thing. There are people all over the world who don't have the opportunity to choose their own government. And I don't think we should be taking this for granted.
Well, and again, we said this in our last video, it was said during committee, and it's even said during the report. The main argument from the longest ballot committee is that parliamentarians shouldn't be making the rules for their own elections. And in committee, they said, well, you should set up an independent body. So the Liberal chair, Chris Biddle, said, okay, how do you think that should work? And Thomas's response, this is rich. Well, you're a bunch of smart people. I'm sure you can figure it out. Says the guy whose whole point of this alleged protest is to say parliamentarians shouldn't be the quote-unquote smart people to figure it out. You just undermined the entire point of your protest right there, which reveals to all that this is nothing more than just some silly prank that you find quote-unquote hilarious, and that you want to, in our opinion, violate the Charter 3 rights of Canadians.